I just feel like we are surrounded in this world by bullshit.
So how can you know what's real and what's not? Science versus. That's how. We answer questions like, does anti-aging skincare actually work? And what is your true personality type? And to answer these questions, we don't use opinions. We dive into the scientific studies, talk to the experts, and put it in a podcast that I know you are gonna love. Listen to Science Versus on Spotify.
In today's episode, Bill Ackman's IPO dream explodes. We're going to play some Queens, and we're also going to talk about some newsletters. Enjoy.
When you're calling to me from outside of a dream, I wanna live, I wanna love you a little longer. I was invincible many years ago when I was so much stronger.
Welcome to the Age of Jeremy. My name is Jeremy Quintanilla. I'm the founder and CEO of Q Consolidated Limited. We focus on investing and creating businesses in media and entertainment, finance, investing, and insurance, education and e-learning, art, music, and the humanities, earth and human sustainability and advancement, and earth and space exploration and transportation. Our current businesses include 32 Warrior Academy, Q Financial, Age of Radio, and Merlin, just to name a few. You can find me on all socials at Age of Jeremy, except on X, it's at Age of Jeremy Q. And on Facebook, it is Cesar Jeremy Quintanilla. There are links in the episode description below. If you are new to this podcast, this is all about the trials and tribulations and just the shit that I go through to build my businesses. And I hope you pick up some wisdom along the way. I also have guests that share their trials and tribulations, becoming content creators, and the adventures they have gone through to become entrepreneurs. And we will be having more of those episodes coming out soon. If you don't know what Age of Radio is a media company that I have that has a plethora of podcasts. You can check all those podcasts out, most of those podcasts out at ageofradio.com. We've revamped our website, so head on over and check that out. At Q Financial, we're also working on expanding our business team, our wealth protection specialists. If you are interested in learning how to protect your wealth and learn how you can teach that to others and also make some money along the way, with indexed universal life insurance and fixed indexed annuities, and you want to be a part of the fastest growing team, the Milliere Warriors, the fastest growing team under Coach JV in WFG history, then go ahead and email me. My email is in the episode description. It's jeremy.quintanilla at Q Financial LLC. That's jeremy.quintanilla at Q Financial LLC. All right, let's get into this episode. As always, we're going to kick this off with a little bit of news from Bloomberg. This is where I like to get most of my news, but I do also get news. I also get news from The Economist. I also get news from the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. Daily, or Arizona Republic. I think it's U.S. I forgot who owns U.S. something owns the Arizona Republic, but I also read the Arizona Republic. I'm an advocate of being up to date in what is going on in the news, whether or not you think that the media is garbage or that the media just lies. It's still important to get a sense of what's going on in the world. And so you too should read some newspapers, and those are the ones that I recommend. Also, the Financial Times is a really, really good one. But Bloomberg is where I get a lot of my articles, and we're going to talk about Ackman's IPO dream. It implodes. I said explode earlier, but it implodes from 25 billion to zero in just a few weeks. Bill Ackman is a billionaire. He has been a fund manager, and he was working on taking his IPO public. And instead of IPO, I should say his hedge fund. He's taking his hedge fund to an IPO, or he's trying to take his hedge fund public. If you don't know who Bill Ackman is, again, he's an American billionaire hedge fund manager who is the founder and executive officer of Pershing Square Capital Management. His investment approach has made him an activist investor. As of June 2024, Ackman's net worth was estimated at $9.3 billion by Forbes. An activist investor is what's also known as shareholder activism. It's a form of activism in which shareholders use equity stakes inside of the corporation to put pressures on its management for, I guess, things that they believe need to be changed, whether that's from a social or cultural standpoint or from a business standpoint of things that need to be changed inside of the business as well. Perfect example is, during the beginnings of the Hamas Israeli conflict or Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Following the onset of the Israel-Hamas war, after the Hamas-led attack on Israel, several Harvard undergraduate student groups signed a letter condemning the Israeli state. The statement held the Israeli regime entirely responsible for an unfolding violence, declaring that millions of Palestinians in Gaza have been forced to live in an open-air prison, and called on Harvard to take action to stop the ongoing annihilation of Palestinians. In response, Ackman called for the publication of the names of all the students involved in signing the letter so that he could ensure his company and others do not inadvertently hire any of those signatories, which is, in my opinion, completely asinine. Ackman posted, "One should not be able to hide behind a corporate shield when issuing statements supporting the actions of terrorists, and the names should be made public so their views are publicly known." And so, obviously, former Harvard President Lawrence Summers, though agreeing with Ackman on the need to look at employees' political views, called Ackman's request for a list of names the stuff of Joe McCarthy. And so essentially we could think of that as social shareholder activism, is that if he has ownership stake or at least a board stake inside of the businesses that he invests in, then he can make a statement or try to get them to not hire any of the people who have these types of political views, which in my opinion is ridiculous. Now, that being said, he has been recently trying to take Pershing Square Capital public, and that is essentially imploded. This is an article from Ann Massa and Catherine Burton from the Bloomberg.com or from Bloomberg. Bill Ackman has taken to X again, this time to hail a fan who'd posted an image of him as a Roman general out of Gladiator, which I don't know, I wouldn't make that comparison of Bill Ackman. "Welcome to the posse," the hedge fund billionaire replied. "Let's roll." It was January, and Ackman, as usual, was spoiling for a fight, tweeting night and day to his roughly 1 million followers. The investor had becoming a leading voice in the conservative campaign against campus wokeism, and in the process, a Wall Street phenomenon on X, which, I think that Jewish people, I feel, would be more open to wokeism. Being that wokeism is about being cognizant of racial injustices that have happened in society, and somehow conservatives, who have done a really good job, in my opinion, they did this very well, of utilizing that statement or woke to mean this thing where people are just bitching about every single thing that's happening, and that's not the truth. I think I would prefer to be woke than to be a conservative any day of the week. Now, some 7 months later, the posse Ackman needs most has all but abandoned him. In the space of a few weeks, Ackman's bold plan to steer a new investment fund onto the venerable New York Stock Exchange has collapsed around him. After betting his wide X falling would help, Pershing Square USA Ltd raised $25 billion in an initial public offering in what would have been an unprecedented feat for a U.S. closed-end fund. Ackman cut that target to $4 billion and then to $2 billion. On Wednesday, Pershing Square withdrew the IPO completely, and that's because that people that are pandering to people that are against being woke or anti-wokeism are people that really don't have any integrity or any, in my opinion, or any most on average from the people that I've seen on social media, they don't have any follow through with the things that they say. They're there to say things, say whatever they want, believing that they don't have any repercussions to what they say, and believing that freedom of speech is being able to say whatever the fuck you want about whatever the fuck you want without any repercussions whatsoever. Anyways, and so this is a perfect example of Bill Ackman failing. And as I always say, I don't think Bill Ackman's a bad person per se, but I mean, this is what happens to people that that are on, in my opinion, the wrong side of the line. Okay, what comes next is uncertain. Pershing Square has promised to, and by what I mean by the wrong side of the line is just like he's on the wrong side of history in some of the things that he's saying and the things that he seems to be doing, and it's very disheartening for me to see nothing's changed about Trump, and then to see people like Bill Ackman to move over to wanting to vote for Trump. I think Trump does a really good job on, but I think that to do that, you're sacrificing your integrity. I also think you might be sacrificing your integrity depending on what it is and your value systems for voting on the Kamala side. And I think that I'm more of a proponent now that, so maybe the best thing in some tastes sometimes isn't to vote, especially when your options are garbage, or to find an option that you believe in, whether or not you think that by voting for that other option gives the other team a head up. At least you're sticking true to who you are and to what your values are, and then you're voting for what you truly believe in. And I don't personally think that Bill Ackman's sticking to his values by changing his vote to Trump. But again, I don't know his heart. That's just from the stuff that I see on social media. So what comes next for Pershing Square is a little uncertain. Pershing Square has promised to report back, but this much is sure. Investors say if Pershing Square USA ever does reach the U.S. stock market, it won't be in its current form. It's a remarkable come down for Ackman, whose long, colorful career has been punctuated by outsized wins and devastating losses. His latest trouble is nothing next to beatings he took on Herbalife Ltd. And Valiant Pharmaceuticals, but it comes at a time when he sought and gained widespread attention. His full-throated criticism of diversity initiatives and vocal support for former President Donald Trump has raised his profile from the narrow confines of Wall Street to the battlefield of the nation's cultural wars. Behind the IPO's debacle was a series of missteps that left many of Wall Street wondering what Ackman was thinking. Even the way he ended the IPO stunned bankers and other participants. On what was supposed to be a routine update call, Ackman announced, "I woke up this morning and had an idea. At Pershing Square, we only do great deals, home runs. I'm going to pool the deal." A few days earlier, major backer, fellow hedge fund manager Seth Klarman had retreated after his Bow Post Group offered to invest $150 million. Klarman was angered that Ackman named him in a letter to big investors about the IPO that later was made public. A major Democratic donor, Klarman was also likely unhappy about being associated with the Trump-supporting Ackman. People who know Klarman say, ultimately, the company disclosed the letter which Ackman had written to investors who bought 10% of his firm in June. In the same letter, Ackman made a last-minute entreaty. He urged wealthy would-be investors to step up. The sooner, the better. So maybe the days of Bill Ackman are over. I don't know. We'll be right back. All right, in the last episode, last Tuesday specifically, we talked about Game Time, which is a newsletter from LinkedIn News, and it talks about some of the games that they have. So I thought we would run down just one of those games. I think that you should play it. You should try to play it with friends. I don't know how the full thing works. I'm going to go over how to play Queens. That's the one that came up on here. So if you go to LinkedIn, go to your profile on the right-hand side, you should see some games, or go to Home, which is your main profile on LinkedIn, and then go to the right, on the right-hand side after your feed. You should see something that says games, news. I don't know what you have there, but you should be able to find some of their games. One of those games is Queens. So the goal is to have exactly one crown in each row, column, and color region. So we have to have a crown in each row, column, and color region with no crown touching each other. There is only one right answer and no guessing is needed. Let's walk through how this works. Start tutorial. Tap the cell once to place X. So I have a little square. It has pink, orange, green, and blue tiles and some gray tiles. I only have one pink tile. So it's telling me to push on the pink tile, and then I can tap again to place my crown. Each row can only have one crown. You can use X to show where crowns cannot go. Tap to place X and we'll place the other X's for you. So for example, this is very similar to Sudoku, where you can only have a certain numbers. You can have 1 through 9 in a box, 1 through 9 in a line across, and 1 through 9 in a line down. And the goal is to get all of the squares filled with either a number 1 through 9. And this seems similar. So we can only have one crown, and we can use X to show where X's cannot go. So for example, if I put this crown in this first box, I can't have a crown going across, and I can't have a crown going down, but I can have a crown in any of the other areas. So each column can only have one crown. So tap to place X. So I have a crown. I have X's in all of the tiles to the right, and I have a crown in all the tiles down because I can't have a crown there. So crowns cannot touch each other, not even diagonally. You can use X to mark all cells surrounding a crown. So I have a crown in the upper left corner. I have an X next to it and an X underneath it, and I need to have an X diagonal to it because a crown cannot touch a crown. Each color region can only have one crown. So for example, I have a pink crown right now. I have X's in all of these other orange areas, and I have X's in some of the blue areas going down, but I have an orange area that's open. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 orange tiles that have X's, and I can put a crown in the orange tile that's still available. So I'm going to place my crown. Well, they're going to make me do these X things. So I'm going to put my crown in this only green one. And I'm going to put a crown in this orange one, which is going to be the crowns for that line and then the lines down. And you have to go play this to see it. So it's a really fun game. Game on. You're ready to play. So let's play a quick game here, and then we'll go to. Oh my God, this game had so many tiles now. I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. Okay, so feeling stuck. Tap hint at the top. Let's just play a few. So I can't have a crown in that area, but that means I have an X there, an X there, an X there, an X there, an X there. I need to have a crown in an orange area, but I can't have one there or there. So let's see. I can't have X, 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 X. That can be an X. So then if I put a crown here, this could be a crown, but this can't be a crown. Oh, this can be oh no. It told me that I couldn't put a crown there. I'm going to try to put a crown there. I can't. So that means that the only place that I can put a crown is there. So then this is an X. This is an X, 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 X. Let's see here. I'm going to try to get this one done. And I think... All right. I think I can only have a crown in each row, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, only one color. You can only have a crown in one color. So this has to be a crown. Okay, so then this can't be. This has to be a crown. So this can't be, and this can't be, and this can't be, and this can't be. So this has to be a crown. This is actually a pretty fun game. You should definitely check out Queens. It's actually pretty easy and fun. I'm probably playing on a super, super easy level. And hopefully my recording, let me make sure that we're still recording. Oh, so we are still recording. Okay, so this is probably boring because you can't see it. So maybe I'll throw up here and we can play some Queens on YouTube. Maybe, I don't know. Let's see here. Okay, so I can't have a queen there. I can't have a queen there. I can't have any in this row. So I only have one more spot. I need to have a queen in this row. So this has to be the queen. And then I'm done. I beat it. You're crushing it. Solved in 5 minutes and 47 seconds. If I knew what the hell I was doing, then I probably could do better. I'm going to post this on my LinkedIn and on my X. So go check those out. And on my threads, go check those out right now. Right now, before you finish listening to this, or while we listen to this break, go check that out and go play Queens on LinkedIn. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to talk about newsletters. Last week, we talked a little bit about content creation or content marketing, and I just wanted to dive into newsletters mainly because I'm trying to plan out when to write it, how to keep it consistent, how to do stuff with everything, which is something that a lot of entrepreneurs run into. Especially entrepreneurs get a lot of ideas and they want to roll with those ideas. And so sometimes we go out the gate not planning as best as we could or strategizing. And I'm trying to get much better at that just from advice from someone that I had received, one of my team members that I received some of that advice from. And so I think that one of the best places to start a newsletter, I think that is LinkedIn. That's where I'll be doing this specific newsletter when I launch it. And I'll be talking more about that on the podcast as it moves forward and as we get some imaging for it. But you can go check out our Merlin page, and we have a newsletter post that comes out. I don't think we have it set up as a newsletter yet. I'm going to be working on that. Mine, I'm going to be having as a specific newsletter that's designed just for LinkedIn. Newsletters are one of the best places to get your information handed to you. So like for Bloomberg, they have an opener and a daily briefing at the end of the day, I think. And that's one of the places that I read, as it comes in. If I catch it, I sit there and I try to read that so I can get an idea of what happened throughout the day. I think newsletters are one of the best places that you can get information. It always has been. News is one of the greatest things that we've been able to construct and create over time to make sure that people know what's going on in communities. And I think that you should get involved with as many newsletters, and for your brand, also make a newsletter as well. And so here's how you can get started on LinkedIn newsletters. This is from Andy Crestadino. He's a co-founder and CMO at Orbit Media that focuses on CEO, analytics, AI, content strategy, and website. This is one he actually made last year. There's a couple of these that I found that I think that do really good. But here's some of the 10 best practices that he has. He also has a LinkedIn. He also has a LinkedIn, like a YouTube page that he can talk about this from. So, yeah, so here's a little bit about those 10 best practices. Let me go ahead and find them here. So, some of the things that we want to do is you want to find out your frequency. So one of the best things is to find out the frequency of your article. So you might want to do something that's bi-weekly, weekly. I'm always been a big fan of doing things bi-weekly because it allows us to maybe miss that week. So we're not feeling so stressed and rushed to get them out. I think when you have a team in place and your team can help a lot with it, you can probably do them in a more weekly basis. So one, we need to look at the frequency, and you also want to do the timing. So in the experience of the gentleman who wrote this, Andy, in their experience, the best time to send a LinkedIn newsletter is early in the morning. The later in the day, the less engagement their articles seem to get. So they try to get them out by 8 a.m. When possible. The only caveat that I think that I personally have to this is that so let's say we are doing it and everybody's following these guidelines, then everybody's going to be pushing their content out at the same time. So I think one of the best things that we can do as business owners or entrepreneurs or brands is get an idea of when our audience is live and when our audience is doing things on our different social media platforms so that we can get an idea of when it's going to be best for our audience. And when we find that, then we have that be our timing, and that we can also do the same thing for our frequency. So the next thing that he says is the newsletter name. You want the newsletter name to be very simple and specific. Mine, I'm not specifically going to do that, but I do recommend that you do that so that people kind of know what the purpose of the newsletter is the better. So like for theirs, they have digital marketing tips. So they deliberately gave it a very simple, specific name. They wanted anyone who sees it in their stream to know what it's about. So they avoided clever branded names, opting for simple and specific. So mine's going to be a little bit more cleverly branded, but which means it's going to be harder for me to get it to people, or I need to make sure that when it says that this is the name of the newsletter, this is what specifically it is about. And then you should get people to come on. Also, too, I talk to you guys frequently through my social media and through my podcast here. So because of that, I can tell you what it's about and you guys can go do it and then share it and so forth. Okay, so are LinkedIn newsletters worth it? So here's some of the pros. So they made this really cool chart about the advantages should you launch a LinkedIn newsletter. So first, the advantages are it's fast list growth, great reach. They can subscribe in one click. So that's one of the advantages. Engagement is really high with LinkedIn newsletters, especially if people are engaged on LinkedIn. And if your audience is on LinkedIn, then it makes sense to have a newsletter that's on LinkedIn. 3, they're efficient and easily delegated. It's easy and fast to publish here. A virtual assistant can also do it. So if the thing's written up, you can give it to someone, they can go and post it, and it's easy peasy. And people that subscribe to the letter will not only get it gets it to their messages, it also goes to the post feed, if I'm not mistaken. So cost is 0. LinkedIn handles everything for you. And then you can still run your own email newsletter. So you can use this newsletter to get people to your email, and then that will take them to the other newsletters that you have. One of the companies that does a beautiful job with newsletters, in my opinion, is the New York Times. The New York Times has a bunch of newsletters for all kinds of different things. And it's a great way for them to put advertisements to people through content. It's a great way for them to engage with people via their content, get people to back to their news subscriptions with content. And I think that they just do a great job with that. One of the things that I am a big fan of with the New York Times, besides New York Times games. Some of the disadvantages on a LinkedIn newsletter is it's not your website, so you don't control the experience, so it's not really your traffic. It's not your email list. There's no way to export subscribers or addresses. You're going to have to capture them in some way through a link that they have to click on the letter to go and sign up for your newsletter, your other newsletter, or to go to your website. The analytics are horrible. He says they're not great. I would say that they're horrible. It's very limited to compare to other analytics and even other social media platform analytics. There's no real email marketing tools. So that's pretty blatant. There's no real email marketing tools towards it. And there's not any real SEO. So that's one of the biggest problems. Those are some of the disadvantages with it. So those are some of the things to think about. But it's a really great place to have a starting point, especially even if you don't have a website or your brand is somewhere else and you want to touch people. Here, I know that one of the individuals that helps us with Merlin, they have a very big following here on LinkedIn. That's how they built their brand. And they did that without having to build a website, having to do anything. So you can just do a lot more with LinkedIn as it relates to either business to business or business to people while they're at work, content, and the way in which you reach them. So I think that's a really good idea. Okay, so those were some of the things that he said. Let me see. I think these are the actual 10 things that he wanted to say. Okay, here are the 10 best practices. So decide a personal page newsletter or a company page newsletter. So like mine's going to be a personal page. We also have a company page newsletter for Merlin. So I think that you should have both. You should always be working on your personal brand and you should also be working on your business brand. So your business should have a newsletter and you should have a newsletter. Like we have a newsletter for Age of Radio. It's not here on LinkedIn. But we try to send something out every single month, with the podcasts that are going on, news that we might be think relevant or news that they might miss. And we're working to really hone in on some of these newsletters and then them going out to people. 2, give it a very descriptive name, even if it sounds boring. Maybe the most important tip in the article, according to the author, is they recommend naming your newsletter something that has obvious relevance and value, like the digital marketing tips that I just mentioned earlier. 3, write your newsletter description. This is where I think if you have like a cool name for your newsletter, this is where you can make it known what it's about and how you can capture people. So again, you need to be very specific. Tell the reader exactly why they should click and why they should subscribe. So for instance, if we were a marketing newsletter, this is a place to get up-to-date information on marketing tips and social media tips and what's going on in marketing and social media marketing. So subscribe. So list the topics and keep it simple. You can write a description of up to 120 characters. The shorter, the better, because you want people to be able to see the brand name, see what the description is, and then click subscribe. Okay, so again, set your frequency, which we mentioned. I say always start with biweekly or monthly and then move to more frequently, but that's just my opinion. Do whatever think that you can do consistent, because consistency is going to be the key when it comes to any type of newsletter content that goes out. Just from my own experience of not doing it consistently. Make the first edition very, very good. So the first edition is very important. It's special because when you hit publish on your first newsletter, all of your connections and followers will get an invitation. This is a big promotional push. So that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to get mine all organized, because I want that first one to be a really good one. Because if I have 500 followers, hopefully I can get, 500 people to sign up right away. 6, add some nice pre-header text. So at the top of the newsletter article, there's going to be some text that you can put in there. So you want that to be highlighted. You can also have an image associated with it, if I'm not mistaken. The way that they put it here is the top of the newsletter article is going to appear in the subscriber's inbox as pre-header text. This can affect open and click-through rates, so consider putting something special in that very first line. Knowing that the first line of text is the email pre-header, we usually start the article with a little hello message with a waving hand emoji. This helps it stand out in crowded inboxes as you'll be able to see if you just go to LinkedIn and type in how to start your own LinkedIn newsletter, 10 best practices. You can find this article. It's a fantastic article. I think that Andy did a really, really good job. So when they do that, you'll be able to see that their messages, like it says Andy Castandino via inbox user flow analysis. There's a little hand. Hi there. Thanks for stopping by. And then it has that's going to show up in that first section of their notifications. Always collaborate and mention if you don't think about social promotion until after the article is live, you're a little too late. So the best content marketers involve influencers and subject matter experts in the process of creating the article. So for example, in the example that I gave about the marketing, one of the things that we would do is find people like Andy and say, hey, look, these are some of the best practices to start a LinkedIn newsletter. This is from Andy Crestodino. We would add him or put like links to his stuff so you could see it. And so there's lots of things that go on with the newsletter, and it doesn't always have to be content that you create. You could be curating content, bringing it into the newsletter and getting it out to people. So that's something to think about. Always collaborate and mention. The more you can collaborate on anything, the better. 8, add a great visual, diagram, charts, or faces. Some will see your article in the inbox. Others who have not yet subscribed will see it in their social streams. The feature image will appear in the social snippet. So that visual is key to your success. It's called the cover image, and the banner size should be 1920 by 1080 pixels. The more compelling the image is, the more likely your LinkedIn content will get traction. Use something that makes the viewer lean in, such as a chart or a graph, or something that stands out on its own, like a diagram, or something that makes them slow down, like a person's face. So you need to have something that's clickbaity that can get their attention so that they'll click on it and move forward with reading the article. 9, link back to the original on your site. You're committing to LinkedIn, but it's still nice to drive some of your own website traffic. So it's really important on these things that you have links to the places where you want them to go to. And one of those places is going to be your email. So once you start playing around with the LinkedIn newsletter functions, you can see what I'm talking about. And then you can link things over to your own stuff so that way people can click on it and be brought out. And then you can repurpose people or move people over to where you want them to go to get their information. 10, promote the LinkedIn newsletter internally. Yes, LinkedIn is going to promote the article through email, but you can help. If you share the article with a few close colleagues, you can get some early engagement on the post. And so, not to go and read everything that he put here, essentially what you want to do is you want to advertise that you have it. So me kind of talking to you right now about my marketing newsletter that I'll be working on for the Age of Jeremy brand, and that will be going out on social media, that we will be pushing that consistently here as we get going on it, hopefully by Q4, is that the point is that you want to tell people about it. You want to make it just like anything else that you're doing. And inside of that, you can keep driving people to the things that you're trying to sell them or to the other products and services that you have. So those are the 10 best practices. As a quick recap, I'm going to flow through them real quick. So decide if it's going to be a personal page newsletter or company page newsletter. I think you should have both. 2, give it a very descriptive name, even if it sounds boring. 3, write your newsletter description. 4, start your frequency. 5, make the first edition good. 6, add some nice pre-header text. 7, always collaborate and mention. 8, add a great visual, diagrams, charts, or faces. 9, link back to the original on your site. And then 10, promote your LinkedIn newsletter as much as you possibly can so that you can get people bought in and brought over, I guess would be the best way to say it. And with that, as I always say, be thankful, grateful, and kind. We'll talk with you next time. Bye.
You were born in your dying, honey. I'm already crying for you. Let all my God.
Thank you so much for listening to The Age of Jeremy. If your podcast app that you're listening to this on allows you to rate this podcast, please rate it and share it with as many people as possible. We will truly appreciate it. And if you are not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe or follow or do whatever you need to do so that you are notified when this podcast goes live every week, most weeks, most of the time. All right, I'm recording on a Neumann microphone. I'm recording into my Zoom L8. I am recording onto Steinberg's Cubase, and I use Waves plugins. The opening song was Positive Charge, I believe. Positive Charge or Positive Change by Gaslight Anthem. I need to double check the name of the song by Gaslight Anthem. And the closing song is Gardens by Trevor Hall. And one last time, be grateful, thankful, and kind, and we'll talk with you next time. Bye.
You were born in your dying.